Hello. Watching people join. We'll give people a chance to join, give them a few minutes in case anyone's running late. We're still a minute early. Feel free to say hi in the chat. This is also a good chance to ask any stray questions you might have before we get started. Hi, Rebecca. And Dan. Has anyone used the feature we're going to talk about today? It came out at the end of April, and I'm wondering if anyone's used it yet. Or if you understand it. Great. Also, Bruce, are you new to Grist or just new to this feature? Did it work, Dan? Yeah. You know, as we're waiting for people to come in, nobody sent in any questions. Maybe I'll just show people kind of like little known things about Grist. So for example, let's say you have like a row that has a lot of cards. I mean, a lot of columns you want to see it as a card. If you just hit space, it'll open as a card. Just a nice little shortcut for you. Hi, Eduardo. I'm just sharing random tips people might not have discovered while we wait for people to come in. Also, that card that pops up, you can edit what that card would look like from the raw data table. So you can edit that. So let's say in this case, let's say I just want to change the way it looks a little bit. I'm just going to rearrange things. I want to do 3 columns for whatever reason instead of 2 columns. Or I'm just, changing how this looks, and I actually want to hide the fields for whatever these fields. So it looks a little bit different now. So what that does now, it's whenever, so this is for a particular table. I did this for all expert witnesses. So now whenever I open this using that shortcut, now I see the 3 columns. So it's a way to kind of like have cards for particular tables already pre-formatted. A lot of people don't discover this, but it's a time saver because when you add new cards with that table, it'll take that default. Hi, Michael. Okay, we'll give a couple more minutes, maybe just a minute as people are filtering in. I'll think of other little tips and things that people miss. If you're new, oh, I didn't show it on the screen. Good point. Let me do that again. Good point, Bruce. I thought I was screen sharing, but I wasn't. So basically, this is the shortcut that I was talking about. If you have a lot of rows, if you just hit space, it'll open things in a card. So sometimes that's a quick way without having to take up real estate as a card. If the selection doesn't matter and you just need a quick way, and you can still edit it. It's not read-only, it's fully editable. And then in raw data, you can configure what that looks like per table. And then that'll be the default way that cards open, either using that shortcut with hitting the space bar. The space bar is not the only way. So the space bar is one way to do it, or right in the row header, you can view as card. And if you were to add a new card with this table data, it'll show you, it'll be in that layout that you already configured. So it's a time saver. Yeah. This happens a lot with like contacts cards. You might have a contact card in a particular way you like that appears on multiple views. So just save that way you like it. And then now it'll look that way every time. And you do that configuration in raw data. So it's like the default card. Okay, so I'm going to jump into what we're talking about today. At the end of April, we introduced a new feature that lets you filter drop-down lists for reference list, choice, and choice list columns. Those are the only ones that have that drop-down. So for example, in this template where we're staffing employees for a particular gig, there's a role. So let's say I wanted to add somebody else to the fly rig because I need 2 people for this particular show. This is like theater shows. I might want the employee drop down to only the employee drop down to only show me those people who have fly rig as a role over here, right? So that filtering is what we're going to learn today. Like I said, it's only available for reference and choice columns. If you're new to Grist and you're not aware of column types, let me share a link to a webinar that we have recorded, which is all about column types. So there's a link now for the column types webinar. And I'm going to show you a few other examples where this would be nice to have, and then we'll do those examples. So another one would be, let's say we have here population rankings, we have countries and cities, and another shortcut, control down key, takes you to the bottom of a table, and then control up to the top of a table. You have to have the table selected, and then that was control down, so you don't have to scroll all the way, control up to get to the top. So let's say I wanted to add new data. Now it's for San Jose, Costa Rica. So, okay, I start filling in data. I come over to country. I start typing. It starts auto-completing. There's Costa Rica. That looks good. So now I want to fill in for San Jose. And as I start filling it in, I can see there's two San Jose's because my data here has San Jose, Costa Rica, and San Jose, which is in California in the United States. So how do I know which one of these is the correct one? We can do filtering where we only show the cities that are associated with a particular country. So we'll learn how to do that as well. And then the last one is just adding a little bit of complexity or just a different way to look at this, which is in this case, I'm adding expert witnesses who can like testify in court. And in this case, whenever I put in a primary field, it would be nice if this list only showed me those that have to do with whatever my primary field is. Just filter it. If your lists get very long, it's a good way, because I may not remember off the top of my head what's vocational or what's mining or things like that. So it'd be nice to have that list filtered for you based on this value. So we're going to go ahead and do that in these 3 examples. We're going to start with this one. And the reason we're going to start with this one is because in order to understand filtering the reference dropdown, we need to understand references. And the more you understand references in Grist, the more of a Grist power user you will be. I'm going to share a link to our reference columns guide, which is very useful. But I'm going to show you like the key thing you need to understand about references that will help you with working with references in Grist in all cases, and especially in this case. So in the case where we saw San Jose twice, even though we're seeing San Jose here, it's not really duplicated data, because the data that you're seeing here, even though you're seeing text, the data being stored in a reference column is not text. It is an entire record in the reference table. So in this case, we are referencing data in the cities table. So I'm over here in the creator panel looking at how it's configured, and I'm choosing to show city because that makes it easy for me to see when I'm entering data. But I'm actually referencing an entire row. So let me actually go to the top here. So like, for example, Japan, Tokyo, if I go over to the cities table, which is the table being referenced, we're actually referencing that row. I could filter, but I'll just, it'll be easier to just kind of say we're referencing this entire row, which is Tokyo. One way to show you exactly what I mean by this, or try to get the mental model there, is every single row in Grist has a record ID. And the way you see a record ID is through the formula $ID. So it's like a Grist attribute that you can use. So I'm going to go ahead and add a formula column, which is just going to be $ID. So we can see what the actual record ID is. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because if we come back here, I can make the display column, instead of the city text, let's actually look at it as row ID. So we can see that in the cities table, record 1 is Tokyo, Japan. So in the cities table, record 1. This is different than your numbering over here. Your numbering is just like numbering your rows. And as I sort and filter this, this number is fixed. The record ID is for this record. We're referencing this entire record. And because we're referencing the entire record, that lets us do things like drill into this row and pull out whatever data we need. So for example, let's say what I wanted to do was add another column that is pulling in the continent based on whatever row is being referenced. So that's a very simple reference lookup. You're going to use this a lot in Grist. So there is a way to do it in the UI, but I'm going to teach you the formula because it's very simple and very powerful. So the formula is simply the name of the reference column in this table. So the one that we're in now. So the name of that reference column is city. You can click to insert or start typing and it should autocomplete. Then a period to drill in. And these are all of the fields in that table. Remember, we had continent in that other table, in the cities table. And now when I save that, it's going to pull in the continent with the referenced record. So cities 2, whatever that one is, it's India. Let's find out what city that is actually. I can just change this back to city. Delhi, Asia. That's why it's pulling it through. Okay. That always like takes a little second for people to wrap their heads around if it's your first time seeing it. And the reason that's really important is because we're going to use that pattern, that formula, in our choice filtering. Okay. And just to sort of emphasize this in the other direction, I think I just want, well, if anyone has a question, let me just pause. Maybe you get it. My cat's here. Okay. Okay. So because we're referencing the entire record, we can easily drill in and pull fields from that record that is being referenced, such as continent. So now when we are doing our filtering, what we want to do is what we want to say, it's for a particular choice in this dropdown, each one of these choices is a reference. That's what is being stored here. So each one, I want you to look into that choice, find the country. So look in, tell what is the country, and then only show me those choices where that country matches this country. So let's go ahead and write that. So there's an attribute, there's a new attribute for this feature, which is just choice. This is how you refer to the choices in the dropdown. This choice is a reference, so we can drill in and find the country. And it's when country equals, we're working in Python, so you need double equal sign. That's how you do a comparison. If you do a single equal sign, you're defining a variable. Here we're comparing. If it equals the country column in this table. And if I didn't do any typos, we should be good. So now, based on Costa Rica, this should just have one city, which is San Jose. It doesn't have that duplicate. In fact, let's go ahead. Let's fill in that. Let's fill in San Jose quickly. And then I want to also show you if we did United States, we should be seeing all of the US cities. Oh, whoops, I'm in the wrong column. In this column. So here's a bunch of US cities. And we should, again, have San Jose in here. And even though the text is the same, remember the value being stored is not the same. If I were to look at the actual row ID, we can see there's different row IDs because it is pointing to different rows in this table. So it's 362 and 551. Let's filter this real quick to just kind of reemphasize that point. 362 is Costa Rica, San Jose, and 551 is United States, San Jose. And that's important if later you're going to do analysis, you want it to be the correct San Jose that you have in the link. Okay. Everything's being a little slow with Demio. Any questions about that? If no choices match, it'll say there's no, right. If you try to pick the city first, that's a good question. So if I try to go here, there's no choices matching the condition. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the formula doesn't evaluate until you try to do this. If the formula itself is broken, if something's wrong with it, when you evaluate, it'll tell you over here, there's like invalid rule. Sometimes it can catch it before you evaluate, sometimes after the fact. Bruce, you said share that document. Do you mean this one? Yep, I can share this document. Is this one publicly accessible? It's totally fine. There's nothing sensitive in here. So more, how do you make something publicly accessible? Public access on, for viewer, confirm. And now you should be able to see this, and I'll just share it. Okay. So you can play with things in here. Okay. By the way, everything that I'm walking through where I am showing you this example and also the choice attribute, we have documentation on how to do this. So let me share that documentation, which is how to filter reference choices in a dropdown. Can share that as well. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is gig staffing. So we wanted to filter based on the role that I have chosen. So if we try to do the same thing, in fact, let's try. We have here a reference column. This reference column is pointing to employees table. The employees table is over here. Roles are defined in the row column. So we can drill into this reference to look at the roles and then see if there's a match. But there is one thing to consider here. So let's actually write the thing that doesn't work and then review why it won't work. So if I did choice.roles equals the role for the show, it says that there is nothing matching the condition. But it's not telling me the formula is wrong because it could have been right. The reason it's not matching, and if anyone wants to guess before I say it in the chat, do you know why this isn't working already? We'll come back and look over here in case that helps. It's a list. Dan got it. We got to deal with this list. So it's what we need to find out. What we actually need to do is this role in the list that is generated in this choice list column. So to work with the list, we're going to change this. So now what we want to say is the role for the show. Oops, hit enter too soon. And you see how there it said invalid? It's because in that case, it knows there's nothing to evaluate. So sometimes it'll catch it for you. And sometimes you need to troubleshoot a bit yourself. In choice.roles. So now we're saying, is it in that list? Did I do a typo? I might have. Oh, am I in the wrong column? No. Role for show. Let me see. If I did a typo, which I do often. Choice.roles. Role for show. This should just be a choice in here. If anyone caught my typo, let me know. Dan, you seem like you've already been working with this a bit. I typed that again? What do you mean? Do you mean I? No. Let me see. This is the role for show. I might have put a typo in one of the column names maybe and not realized. Oh, in. Sorry, you're right. In. Thanks, Dan. Yes. I do this a lot when I'm trying to explain as I do. You need in. Is it in the list instead of equal? So Dan's got it. It's a list. In a list, you need to do in. If any of you have worked with access rules, same thing with access rules. You want in. So now it's going to show me Alberto, who we can see is fly, Ernestine, which is fly, and Tanu, which is fly. So in is how you deal with the list. Yep. Okay. And now I want to take this to the expert witness database, where here I have a reference list in the primary fields and a reference list in the secondary fields. And I want to filter this dropdown. So I'm dealing with lists again. So I'm going to be using in. But let's look at the structure here to figure out how the formula should be set up. So this reference is pointing to the secondary fields table. And here I have for every single primary category, there's a secondary one over here. But we need to think about where is the list. So when I'm looking at a choice, so just to take a step back here, when I was pulling a choice in, let me do the formula a different way. So like if I was doing that drill down that we were just doing, which was the employee.roles. Here, the list is in the reference lookup. When I do choice.roles, the list is in that lookup, which is why in the filtering, we are looking for a list in that reference lookup. But in this case, what we're actually doing is we're looking at every choice, and we're not returning a list. We're just going to return one primary field, not a list, and we want to see if it is in this list. So it's going to flip. So that's one thing to think about, is where is your list actually, on what side of the formula is your list. So this time it should be choice dot primary. So my primary is in primary fields. So here we have just the financial ones, and it'll work even if because I'm creating a list here. So as this list grows, now I have financial and forensic. Here I have financial and forensic, if that makes sense. So I wanted to do one where the list is in the lookup, and then the other one where the list is in this table. Is that clear? Okay. And then one last thing, let's come back to this one. This is another one that kind of comes up. It's, let's say I was adding a new employee. There's a new person here, and they have a couple roles. Let's say one of them is stagehand. When entering the next value, I might want to filter out stagehand. Maybe in this case, it's not a huge deal, but there might be some cases where the attributes you're adding to a particular record, you shouldn't have duplicates in that choice list. So you want to prevent people from doing that. You can use this same thing to filter out whatever is already in that choice list. Is anyone ahead of me? Does anyone know how to do it already? Yep, exactly. Not in. So we're going to set a drop-down condition, which is just simply if that choice is not in, with a space, this column roles. So now stagehand isn't there. As I add lighting, lighting won't be there either. So it's just simply, is it not in this cell that we're in right now, this field? Okay. And that's it. I wanted to keep this one really short for the most common use cases, dealing with lists on either side. So either through a reference lookup or in the table that you're in. And then this thing with choice list comes up. Yes. Okay. Any other questions about this, or anything you want me to review or go over more slowly? By the way, the syntax that's supported in these formulas, it's like access rules. It's not like the full Python. It's like you can't like get into like list comprehensions and defining variables and things like that. It's a simplified version of Python, similar to our access rules. And the only new attribute is choice. Also, another thing to think about is when you are doing this filtering, like we have here, there isn't a way to add a new person the way you could on an unfiltered list. I could, if we come back here, I could add a new country, but I can't add a new city that is then tied to that country. For simple cases, we could probably automate that, but it can get tricky with a bunch of reference lists. Okay, go back to the first example where countries equals countries and cities. Okay. Do you want me to do the whole thing again, or do you have a specific question, Eduardo? So the drop-down condition here, it's choice.country equals country. So what we're saying is each choice, sorry, I need to define something. Each choice is a reference. And because it's a reference, we can drill down into this table. So for each choice, so let's say the choice would have been like Baku. We're saying, okay, but look at the country, doing a simple reference lookup. And only if that country matches this country, now I want to see it. Otherwise, it's filtered out. So it's choice.country equals country. 2 equal signs. I would like to make this easier in like a wizard, or like for like 80% of cases where things aren't too complicated, you could anticipate what people want to do. We start with the general solution. This is very Gristy of us, where let's keep it as flexible as possible. And then maybe we'll start creating ways in the UI to do like the majority of use cases. But normally we start with, what's the general solution? Okay. I'm okay to keep this short. Also, if you have any questions that are not about this, just general Grist questions, I'm happy to answer those as well. Yep. That makes sense, Peggy. Yep. If this is your first webinar, we have all of our webinar recordings on YouTube in a playlist. The first 2 are very basic, and the one from March of this year, it's pretty basic. It's just moving something from an Excel-like workflow to Grist, and what you need to keep in mind and what your requirements are. And we are thinking of starting sometime soon-ish, sort of back to basics webinar, because some of these we go a bit more in depth on some more advanced features. Okay. Any other questions? Doesn't have to be about this feature. A formulas webinar? Okay. Yeah, a formulas webinar would be kind of cool. I'd almost want to like get in advance what are people trying to do for the most part, because formulas, there's so many things, but we can definitely do lookups. Lookups are very powerful. There's shortcuts for lookups as well. A lot of people haven't discovered that. How can I'm trying to think of a template where I can show this. Basically, if you have things that are referencing each other, there are shortcuts now let me see. I think I can maybe recreate it in one of them. So I'll show you what I mean. So for example, here we have customers. Customers can have multiple invoices, and invoices can have multiple line items. And then at the invoice level, you might want a total of what was actually paid. So the way that you do this, if you know the formula, it's with a lookup. It looks like this. There's a lookup records in here. There's some matching. But we actually, a few months ago, created a shortcut for this. So I could also add a new row. I know the data is coming from order line items that are pointing to this invoice. And what I want is the adjusted price, and I want the sum. It's creating a copy because I'm on a template. Anytime you edit a template from our gallery, it'll make your own copy. So you see how I got the same number, and it's actually the exact same formula. So we do have shortcuts now when you add a column to do those kinds of aggregations over a lookup. I think people miss those. Whoops, that was my cat. She's bouncing around. But yeah. And then you could just add dollar signs. So we do have these shortcuts, but if you want to learn how to write that formula yourself and understanding a little bit how it works, that's super user status. Oh, speaking of groups, there's a Discord server now. If you haven't discovered it yet, definitely come hang out with us there. I'll share the invite link to the Discord. If you're not in it, I'd encourage you to be. A lot of our power users are in there. They help each other. They sometimes beat us to it, which is great. Sometimes I share memes. Yeah. Custom user actions are tricky. Okay. Yeah. Maybe just a guide on YouTube. Just because I don't know how many people are going to show up for that one. And if you don't want to join the Discord, there is also a community forum. And I'll share the link to that as well. Okay. So there's no other questions. I think we can leave it here. I hope everyone starts using this new feature. The former Back to Basics webinar. Yes. So if you go to our YouTube, and everything's being really slow, but if you go to our YouTube, you go to playlists, there's the Build with Grist webinars. It's going to start playing immediately. You can see that there's a whole playlist here, and the oldest one. So it starts with adapting from spreadsheets to database. This is a good place to start. Importing and summarizing data. That's another good one. And then there's like creating product pages, column types. So they kind of build on each other. I can, is there a way to, no. I'm going to share this link, which has the playlist link in it as well. Okay. Then you can look through that list. Okay. If there's no other questions, thank you for joining.